Hello, I'm Dave and this is Logan, out once again for a walk in the countryside. Thanks for joining us. Now, today we're at the village of Marshwood in West Dorset. It's about 8 miles northwest of Bridport, 7 miles north of Lyme Regis and 22 miles west of Dorchester. And we're going to be walking a roughly 4-mile figure of 8-ish route, including some detours. We'll be exploring a couple of Iron Age hill forts, looking at a couple of churches, a fascinating pub, a very old racecourse and some quite stunning views. Now I'm filming at the end of the summer. It is a glorious sunny day. A few clouds about, but they're beginning to burn off. Very little wind. Should be perfect conditions for walking. Do come along with us. Well, before we actually start the walk properly, as it were, there's a couple of things that I want to look at in Marshwood itself. Marshwood has actually shrunk in size over the years. The main community lives at a hamlet called Marshwood, about a mile to the northeast from here. But what Marshwood does have is a pub and a church. Speaking of the church, that's just behind me here. It's St Mary's Church. Now, the original church was a Norman chapel enclosed within the moat of Marshwood Castle, which is to the south of here. The castle was actually a fortified manor house, and by 1640 the house and church had fallen into ruin. But in 1840, land here was given to allow a new church to be built, which was consecrated in 1841. A new school was built alongside it in 1842, and the building's still here. But by 1884, the church was already in need of extensive restoration, and it was effectively rebuilt with just the tower remaining from the original. And it consists of a nave, chancel, west tower, south aisle and vestry. In 2007, the school took over the existing vestry and a new one built for the church. I think the school still uses the church for lessons. I'm not 100% sure. But up until 1950, the tower was finished with stone crenellations, but the Reverend at the time decided it was too decorated and had them replaced with the present plain blocks. Well, just before we leave the church, what about these views to the west? And we get a great sight of a couple of the Iron Age hill forts that we're going to see. Firstly, on the right there, that's LAMBERT'S Castle, which will be our sort of starting point on the other side. And then a little bit further south is the other Iron Age hill fort, CONEY'S Castle. What a beautiful scene. Well, the other thing that I wanted to show you in the village is a pub, the Bottle Inn, just behind me here. It's been closed for a few years, but I believe it was sold in March 2023 and it's being refurbished and they hope to open it soon, but it's got some tremendous history. It dates to 1585 when it was recorded as an ale house. The name changed to the Bottle Inn in the late 18th century when it became one of the first pubs in the area to sell bottled beer. And I believe in years gone by it's been voted as West Dorset's Pub of the Year by CAMERA on at least 2 occasions. But one fascinating fact about the place is that, believe it or not, it is home, or was home, to the World Nettle Eating Championships. I kid you not. Now, I was reading that the contest started in the late 1980s when 2 farmers had an argument over who had the largest stinging nettles in their field, and one of them promised to eat any nettles that were longer in the other's field. Well, the competition, which is part of a beer festival, involves competitors being served stalks of stinging nettles which are 2 foot long, and they've got exactly 1 hour to pluck the leaves off as many stalks as they can and eat the lot of them. And the winner is the competitor who can show the longest accumulated length of bare stalks. And I believe the record, set in 2014, is 80 feet of bare stalks. Now, obviously, with the pub closed, it hasn't been held here for a while, but certainly in the last couple of years, the competition's been held at a cider farm at Waytown, just to the south of here, north of Bridport. And apparently men and women from all over the world come and compete here. And I'm told that, well, the first few mouthfuls are the worst, and after that your mouth goes numb and your tongue goes black. Amazing what people get up to in their spare time. Okay, well, let's start the walk properly, as it were. So I've driven, I don't know, maybe half a mile west from the Bottle Inn, perhaps not quite that far, to Lambert's Hill, where I parked my car at a National Trust car park. Members, it's free. There's a charge to pay, obviously, if you're a non-member. And from here, we've got a little bit of an exploration to do around the hill. I tell you, it's going to be a hot one today. Got plenty of water for myself and Logan. Well, a handy little map in the car park. We're here, so we're going to do a little bit of an exploration around the hill fort to start off with, and then we're going to head south. We're going to have a little look at Fish Pond Bottoms, a few things to look at there, double back, and then we're going to follow this footpath on the side of Coney's Castle before coming back through Coney's Castle. Already a blackberry stop early on in the walk. Are these going to be juicy enough for you? That's the big question. Yeah, not too bad compared to some of the ones we've had recently. I like that one. No good. Hasn't quite passed the quality testing procedures, but there you go. Maybe find some later on. Well, we're thoroughly enjoying ourselves exploring the top of Lambert's Hill, and as you can see behind me, we've already found a trig point, and as regular viewers will know, that needs to be bagged in the customary fashion. Now, up here on top of the hill, there are the remains of an Iron Age hill fort. It actually covers something like 4.7 hectares, and the fort is sort of located on the northern spur of the hill with steep natural slopes on three sides and a linear rampart on the southern side, which is about 8 metres wide, 3 metres high, with a ditch that's about 4 metres wide and 1.5 metres deep. And there's actually a Bronze Age barrow in the middle. And well, there were probably 2 or 3 phases of construction over the years. And it's one of 4 Iron Age hill forts located on the sort of western edge of the Marshwood Vale, built probably 500 BC and occupied by the Duratrigues tribe, because we're right on the border of land that would have been occupied by their arch rivals, the Dumnoni. I think that's how you pronounce it. They occupied a fair bit of Devon and Cornwall. In fact, although I'm standing in Dorset at the moment, Devon is literally a few yards behind those trees where the county border is. Interesting, as you wander around the top of where the fort was, there are a number of sort of banks and what might be the remains of old stone walls. Possibly the area might have been divided into fields during the 19th century, I don't know. An old map of the area shows that there was once a building called Fair House, and that might have been linked to a fair that they used to have up here. And also on an old map, there was once an Admiralty signal shutter station located up here. I wonder if it was here. I'm not 100% sure, but certainly there's an outline of perhaps where a building might have been. I might be totally wrong, of course. And it would have been one of a chain of signal stations from Plymouth to London that were built to warn of a French invasion during the Napoleonic Wars. by a little pit stop to admire the view. It's very hazy today, so this might not come out so well on the GoPro, but I tell you, it's quite breathtaking. So this is looking over to the northeast, I suppose. A couple of Iron Age hill forks in the distance. On the left, you've got Pilsden Pen, and on the right, there's Lewiston Hill. And we've done walks there in the past, so if you haven't seen either of those two videos, do check those out. Gosh, look at all those crab apples. I think it's been a good year for them. Certainly on our walks on the New Forest, we've seen some bumper harvests this year. Now, earlier on I mentioned a fair, and indeed from the medieval times right up to the 1950s there was quite a major livestock fair held up here on the hill, usually around about midsummer. Sometimes there was a second fair held in September. And at the same time as the fair, they'd often have horse racing up here. Indeed, if you look at an old map, it shows that there was a racecourse here. And indeed, there was proper organised horse racing here between 1864 and 1869. The big race was the Axminster Hurdle. But all that was taken over by pony racing and then point-to-point racing. I was reading that by the 20th century, contests had become a little rough, with stories of substitute horses and riders swapping horses halfway round. The last form of any racing stopped in the 1950s when the National Trust acquired the land. But the outline of the racecourse is still here. There's a faint track about 3/4 of a mile long with occasional white posts. But as to how old the racecourse is, well, local legend has it that there are links back to the 1st century when it was used by a Roman cavalry garrison that was based at nearby Wadden Hill. Well, we're now going to start heading southwards, making our way off Lambert's Castle. And we're going to be on part of the Wessex Ridgeway, that 136-mile long-distance path that goes from Marlborough in Wiltshire all the way to Lyme Regis and the edge of Dorset. Sorry folks, another pit stop for a view, and this is on the sort of southern side of Lambert's Castle Hill. And well, ignore those electricity pylons down there, but so everything's looking very green and lush. We've had quite a wet summer. From here, our first view of the sea, and as I slowly pan round, our next destination, which is CONEY'S Castle, another Iron Age hill fort. So we're going to continue heading downhill. We're going to do a little detour to the right. There's something I want to have a look there before we continue southwards. Just seen this waymarker for the Liberty Trail, which is a 28-mile long-distance path from Ham Hill in Somerset to Lyme Regis, and it follows the footsteps of folk who in 1685 walked to join the Monmouth Rebellion at Lyme Regis, taking in Crewkerne and Ford Abbey. A little update on the route. We've come off Lambert's Castle Hill, a little place called Peter's Gore. Gore, well, it comes from the word gara, which is Old English for a triangular piece of land where roads meet, and sure enough there's about 4 or 5 roads here. Before we sort of continue heading southwards to CONEY'S Castle, I'm going to do a little detour west to a place called Fish Pond Bottom. Ah, this is what I was looking for. Now, ignore the whopping great big electricity pylon behind it, but this is St John's Church at Fish Pond Bottom. Built in 1852 as a chapel of ease to the parish church of St Candida and Holy Cross at Whitchurch Canonicorum, which is to the southeast of here, and it's designed to hold just 200 folk. And it just consists of a 4-bay nave with a north porch, and there's a turret containing just the one bell on the roof's western gable. Well, we'll have a little peep inside. As you can see, it's quite a simple design. There's the font on the right hand side there, and there is a stained glass window above the altar there. I believe that's relatively new, sort of late 1960s, I think. And that's just looking back. The door on the right, a single sally at the far end, and it looks like it's a piano rather than an organ. Now, as to why it's called Fish Pond Bottom, I'm not 100% sure. Just along from the church on the northern side of the road there is a pond, but it doesn't appear on either a 1901 map or even a 1950s map, so I think it's quite new, but I'm guessing at some stage there was a fish pond around here. Well, I've retraced my steps back to Peter's Gore. Just passing this building here, I got all excited when I saw its name, the Nag's Head. Sadly, it's not a pub. Right, well, we're continuing sort of southwards along a footpath that's going to take us on the eastern side of CONEY'S Castle, so we should get to see some terrific views, and then we'll come back through the Iron Age hill fort. Oh wow, let's look at this view, looking over to the east. Such a typical Dorset rolling landscape, quite stunning. Well, this is about as far south as we're going to go. Need to start heading back north, uphill all the way back to the car park. But our next destination is the CONEY'S Castle and the Iron Age hill fort, which you can probably just see behind me. It covers about 4 hectares, and it was built on a narrow north-south ridge, and there are double banks and ditches. You've got a steep natural slope to the west, and there were man-made ramparts with ditches to the east. There were a couple of enclosures, and basically the road or lane actually bisects the fort. Wow, there's a tall crop of maize there. Gotta be 5 foot high perhaps. And just see Lewiston Hill peeping up over the top. Some better ones up here. I'm gonna have to pick them for you though. A little bit juicier for you. Yeah. Good boy. So we're now approaching CONEY'S Castle from the south. So this is the road that literally goes through the middle of it. We're probably going to get opportunities to see both sides of the fort, but just to the left here, I don't know if you can see the way the shadows are, but this is the embankment and ditch on the western side. We might get to see a better example of it later on, I don't know. Well folks, some more quite breathtaking views on the western side. So there's the sea looking quite Mediterranean in the sunshine today. I just slowly pan around. In fact, just to my right here, there's well, the bracken does hide it a bit, but there is quite a ditch and a bank going up on the right hand side there. Actually, on the side, it's a lot easier to make out the bank, earthworks and ditch. There's almost like a footpath that goes along the ditch at the bottom. You can see how steep and high those banks are. Pretty substantial for sure. Just for information purposes, just as you come out of Coney's Castle, northern side, there's a little car park. It looks as though it's free as well. Oh, isn't that a beautiful sight? The colours, you've got the purples, the whites and the yellows and the greens, and the bees are loving it. Well, we're very much on the homeward leg now, back at Lambert's Castle Hill. We've just got to cross the location of where the old racecourse used to be, and that should take us back to the car park. Well folks, we've come to the end of our walk. We thought we'd do the end scene here at the top of Lambert's Hill, looking across the Marshwood Vale. We hope you enjoyed the walk today. If you did, please do give us a thumbs up and a like, and do leave a comment, and do check out our Facebook page, Dave's Countryside Walks. We've had a super walk today. No pub though, of course, that's closed, so we're going to have to go back to Bedminster, check out the greyhound, I expect. So until we meet again, thanks for watching, and cheerio. Right, you know, sweetie?